Hello friends, welcome to Institute of Banking Excellence. Today we are going to talk about deposit account and its types. Before starting the video, if you like it, please press the like button, share and subscribe it with your friends. Without wasting much time, let's get started. Types of deposit accounts. As and when a customer opens his account with his banker, he becomes a customer and relationship of customer and banker develops between the both. There are various forms of accounts, like recurring, student deposit accounts, various savings schemes etc. opened by the banks. 1. Fixed deposit. A deposit made by the depositor for a period fixed at the time of making deposit. The minimum term for a deposit is 7 days and maximum 10 years. Deposits with maturity exceeding 10 years can be accepted in case of court directions. Since the banks can deploy this money in a planned manner, the rate of interest offered on fixed deposit is more. The rate of interest can be fixed or floating. The floating rate shall be linked to an anchor rate, which shall not be internally driven by the bank but a market rupee-based rate. Recently SBI has started offering interest rates linked with repo rate. Renewal of overdue term deposit. If request for renewal is received after the date of maturity but within 14 days of maturity, such overdue deposits will be renewed with effect from the date of maturity at interest rate applicable as on the due date. In respect of overdue deposits renewed after 14 days from the date of maturity, interest for the overdue period will be paid at the rates decided by the bank from time to time. Fixed deposits in joint names. The deposit in joint names means the bank becomes debtor to joint owners. Premature payment of fixed deposit in joint names with either or survivor clause can be obtained only when both the depositors are available and give their consent for withdrawal of money, as the mandate of either or survivor is applicable only on maturity. Loan against fixed deposit. Loan against FDR can be obtained with the consent of both the depositors, if in joint names. If only one depositor is available at the place of deposit, the other depositor can send his consent or no objection. Similarly, duplicate fixed deposit receipt can be issued on request of both the depositors. For change in names or addition of names in the fixed deposit, the consent of all the depositors shall be obtained. If after death of the depositor, a request is received by the bank to split the deposit in the names of heirs, it shall not be construed as premature payment of the deposit and no penalty is to be levied, provided the age of deposit and amount of deposit is not changed. Payment of fixed deposit. The payment of FDR if in excess of Rs 20,000 shall be made through pay order, DED or credited to savings, current account etc. Any violation of these guidelines makes banks liable to penalty equivalent to the payment of maturity amount of the FDR. Deduction of tax at source, TDS. The banks are liable to deduct tax at source on interest accruing more than Rs 10,000 in a financial year. The deposits repayable after a fixed period are liable to deduction of tax at source. 2. Savings bank account, opened by the customers to save their income. It is a running account, but banks impose certain restrictions on number of withdrawals and amount of withdrawals. The banks permit 50 withdrawals in 6 months and withdrawals in amount less than Rs 1 is restricted. However, depending on merits of the case, banks can permit withdrawals more than 50 in 6 months. 3. Recurring deposit. An account is opened in the name of depositor who deposits certain amount every month for a fixed period. It carries rate of interest equivalent to fixed deposit as per maturity period of the deposit. The deposit account can be opened singly or jointly. 4. Current account. It is a running account with facility of unlimited withdrawals and deposits. The account is to facilitate the business transactions. Checks with endorsements are acceptable and banks can collect endorsed checks for their current account customers, not available for saving account customers. 5. Notice deposit means term deposit for specific period but withdrawal on giving at least 1 complete banking day's notice. Foreign currency accounts by a person resident in India. 1. Exchange earners foreign currency account, AFC account. 2. Resident foreign currency account. 3. Resident foreign currency, domestic, accounts. 4. Diamond Dollar Account, DDA, scam. Foreign currency accounts that can be held outside India. Accounts for NRI, PIO and resident outside India. 1 non-resident ordinary account. 2 non-resident external, NRE, account. 3 special non-resident rupee account, SNR account. 4 FCNR, B. Interest on deposit accounts. 1. Interest rate on domestic deposits. A. Interest on saving deposits. Interest, which can be fixed or floating, shall be paid on quarterly or shorter basis. It shall be calculated on a daily product basis and under. I. A uniform interest rate shall be set on balance up to ₹1 lakh, irrespective of the amount in the account within this limit. That is, if an account has deposit of say ₹1,25,000, bank has to apply interest rate up to ₹1 lakh in this account in uniformity with other account, on the balance in excess of ₹1 lakh, that is ₹25,000, bank can offer differential rate of interest. 2. Differential rates of interest may be provided for any end-of-day savings bank balance exceeding ₹1 lakh. 2. Interest rates on term deposits. A. Tenor of deposits. Minimum tenor of the deposit offered shall be 7 days. B. Size of deposits. Differential interest rate shall be offered only on bulk deposits, that is single deposit of ₹1 crore and above. For regional rural banks it means deposit of ₹15 lakh and above. C. Banks can offer term deposits without premature withdrawal option. However, all term deposits accepted from individuals, held singly or jointly, for amount of ₹15 lakh and below shall have premature withdrawal facility. Payment of interest on premature withdrawal. A. Interest shall be paid at the rate applicable to the amount and period for which the deposit remained with the bank, not at the contracted rate, and B. No interest shall be paid, where premature withdrawal of deposits takes place before completion of the minimum period. Deposits maturing on non-business working day. A. If a term deposit is maturing for payment on a non-business working day, banks shall pay interest at the originally contracted rate on the original principal deposit amount for the non-business working days, that is intervening between the date of the maturity of the specified term of the deposit and the date of payment of the proceeds of the deposit on the succeeding working day. B. In case of reinvestment deposits and recurring deposits, banks shall pay interest for the intervening non-business working day on the maturity value. Interest on deposits transferred consequent to takeover of a bank. In case branch of a bank is taken over by another bank, the deposit will be deemed to have been transferred with same terms of contract as was originally agreed between the bank and the customer. As such, the bank taking over the deposits of another bank shall pay same interest as was agreed between the bank and the customer. Discretion to pay additional interest. Additional interest can be given on domestic deposits too. I 1.28% over above normal rate to term deposits for 2 years and above of Army Group Insurance Directorate, Naval Group Insurance Fund and Air Force Group Insurance Society. 2. Banks shall, at their discretion, allow additional interest of 1% per annum, over and above the rate of interest on savings or term deposits of bank staff and their exclusive associations, as well as on deposits of chairman, and managing director, executive director or such other executives appointed for a fixed tenure. The account eligible for such rate shall be in the A. Name of member or ex-staff member. B. Spouse of deceased member or spouse of retired deceased member of the bank. C. An association or a fund, the members of which are members of the bank. It may be noted here that retired member of the staff does not include members compulsorily retired by the bank or retired in consequence of any disciplinary action. In the case of a term deposit which is standing in the name of an HUF, the card of the Hindu Undivided Family, HUF, cannot be offered high rate of interest, even if he is a resident Indian senior citizen, as the beneficial owner of the deposit is the HUF and not the card in his individual capacity. Interest on overdue domestic deposit. If a term deposit matures and proceeds are unpaid, the amount left unclaimed with the bank shall attract rate of interest as applicable to savings deposits. Floating rate domestic term deposits. Floating rate domestic term deposits shall be linked to a directly observable and transparent market-determined external benchmark. Penalties. In case of splitting of the amount of term deposit at the request from the claimant, of deceased depositors or joint account holders, no penalty for premature withdrawal of the term deposit shall be levied if the period and aggregate amount of the deposit do not undergo any change. No penalty for premature withdrawal shall be levied, where depositors of the branch desires premature withdrawal of deposit consequent to the transfer of business to another bank, applicable where business of one branch of a bank is transferred to another branch of another bank. Payment of interest on time deposit of deceased persons: in the event of death of the depositor before the date of maturity of deposit and amount of the deposit is claimed after the date of maturity, the bank shall pay interest at the contracted rate till the date of maturity. From the date of maturity to the date of payment, the bank shall pay simple interest at the applicable rate obtaining on the date of maturity, for the period for which the deposit remained with the bank beyond the date of maturity, as per the bank's policy in this regard. However, in the case of death of the depositor after the date of maturity of the deposit, the bank shall pay interest at savings deposit rate, as on the date of maturity, from the date of maturity till the date of payment. Types of death. Death can be physical or legal. Legal death arises when a person goes on missing or not traceable for more than 7 years as per the Indian Evidence Act and a competent court issues an order to that effect. 3. Interest on current account. No interest is payable on amount lying in the account. In case of death of depositor, interest shall be paid for the period from date of death of the depositor till payment to the claimant, at savings rate as applicable at the date of payment. 4. Interest on recurring deposit. The interest on recurring deposit is paid at par with fixed deposit maturity. Let's revise. FD can be between 7 days to 10 years. Above 10 years as per court instructions. For FD and joint names, premature payment or loan can be given only if jointly called for. However, maturity if on either or survivor terms can be made to anyone. After death of a depositor, if FD is split into more than one FD, it will not be treated as premature payment. Payment of FD are in excess of rupees 20,000 not to be made in cash. If so, bank incurs liability to the extent of maturity amount of FD. In case of death of current account holder, interest to be given at simple savings rate. Checks with endorsement cannot be collected for savings account. Fixed deposits cannot be transferred through endorsement. Recurring account carries interest of term deposit of equivalent maturity. 2. Interest rates on rupee deposits non-residents, NRE/NRO. Minimum tenor of NRE term deposits shall be 1 year. Minimum tenor of NRO term deposits shall be 7 days. Interest rates on NRE/NRO deposits shall not be higher than those offered by the banks on comparable domestic rupee term deposits. The benefit of additional interest rate on deposits on account of being bank's own staff or senior citizens shall not be available to NRE and NRO deposits. If an NRE account holder, immediately on return to India, requests for conversion of the NRE term deposit into resident foreign currency account, RFC, the banks shall pay interest at savings rate applicable to RFC account if the NRE deposit has not run for a minimum period of 1 year. However, if the NRE term deposit has completed 1 year, interest shall be paid at the contracted rate. Banks shall not mark any type of lien, direct or indirect, against NRE saving deposits. Penalty on premature withdrawal of NRE deposits. No penalty shall be levied for premature withdrawal of NRE term deposits for conversion into resident foreign currency, RFC, account. Penalties for premature withdrawal can be levied for conversion of NRE deposit into FC and RB deposit and vice versa. Interest payable on the NRE term deposit account of deceased depositor, in case the claimants of an NRE term deposit account of a deceased depositor are residents. The deposit on maturity shall be treated as a domestic rupee term deposit and interest shall be paid for the subsequent period at a rate applicable to a domestic term deposit of similar maturity. 3. Foreign currency, non-resident, accounts. Banks, scam. Tenor of deposits. The maturity period for term deposits under the FCNR/B scheme shall maximum up to 5 years. No bank shall accept or renew FCNR/B deposits over 5 years, and no recurring deposits shall be accepted under the FCNR/B scheme. The interest rates ceiling on FCNR/B deposits. If ceiling rate of LIBOR/swap plus 200 basis points, then period of deposit is between 1 to 3 years. If ceiling rate of LIBOR/swap plus 300 basis points, then the period of deposit is between or equal to 3 to 5 years. The LIBOR/swap rates quoted, displayed by Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India, FEDAI, shall be used as the reference for arriving at the interest rates on FCNR/B deposits. Manner of calculation of interest on FCNR/B deposits. Interest on the deposits accepted under the scheme shall be calculated on the basis of 360 days to a year. That is, each month to be treated of 30 days and year to be treated of 360 days. The interest on FCNR/B deposits shall be calculated and paid at intervals of 180 days each and thereafter for the remaining actual number of days. Calculation of interest on renewal of FCNR/B deposits. Interest calculation on renewal of FCNR/B deposits shall be as under. A. If the period from the date of maturity till the date of renewal, both days inclusive, does not exceed 14 days, the rate of interest payable on the amount of the deposit so renewed shall be the appropriate rate of interest for the period of renewal as prevailing on the date of maturity or on the date when the depositor seeks renewal, whichever is lower. B. In all other cases of renewal, interest rates for the overdue period on the renewed amount shall be determined by treating it as a fresh term deposit. C. If, after renewal, the deposit is withdrawn before completion of the minimum stipulated period under the scheme, scheduled commercial banks may, at their discretion, recover the interest paid for the overdue period, that is, period beyond the original date of maturity. Interest payable on the deposit of a deceased FCNR/B depositor. Scheduled commercial banks shall pay interest on the term deposits standing in the names of a deceased FCNR/B individual depositor or two or more joint depositors where one of the depositors has died, as under. A. If paid on the maturity of the deposit, interest shall be paid at the contracted rate. B. If the deposit is claimed before the maturity date, interest shall be paid not at the contracted rate but at the rate applicable to the period for which the deposit remained with the bank without charging penalty for prepayment. C. In case the depositor dies before the date of maturity of the deposit but the amount of the deposit is claimed after the date of maturity, interest shall be paid at the contracted rate till the date of maturity and simple interest at the applicable rate operative on the date of maturity for the period for which the deposit remained with the bank beyond the date of maturity. D. In case of death of the depositor after the date of maturity of the deposit, the interest rate operative on the date of maturity in respect of savings deposits held under resident foreign currency, RFC, account schemes shall be paid from the date of maturity till the date of payment. E. In case the claimants are residents, the maturity proceeds shall be converted into Indian rupees on the date of maturity and interest shall be paid for the subsequent period at the rate applicable to a domestic term deposit of similar maturity. Payment of interest on FCNR/B deposits of NRIs on return to India. Scheduled commercial banks may, at their discretion, on receipt of the request from the depositor, allow FCNR/B deposits of persons of Indian nationality, origin who return to India for permanent settlement to continue till maturity at the contracted rate of interest subject to the conditions that A. The rate of interest as applicable to FCNR/B deposits shall continue. B. The deposits shall be treated as resident deposits from the date of return of the account holder to India. C. The FCNR/B deposits on maturity shall be converted into resident rupee deposit account or RFC account, if eligible, at the option of the account holder. D. The rate of interest on the new deposit, rupee account or RFC account, shall be the relevant rate applicable for such deposit account. Conversion of FCNR/B accounts of returning Indians into RFC. Bank shall pay interest at the time of conversion of FCNRB account into RFC, resident rupee account even if the deposit has not completed the minimum maturity period mentioned, provided that the rate of interest shall not exceed the rate payable on savings bank deposits held under RFC account scheme. Premature withdrawal of deposits. A. Banks shall, on request from the depositor, permit premature withdrawal of deposits under the FCNRB scheme. B. If the premature withdrawal of FCNRB deposits takes place before completion of the minimum stipulated period I.E.1 years, no interest shall be paid. 4. Penalty on premature withdrawal of deposits. Penalty shall be levied on premature withdrawal of FCNRB deposits. 1. When the depositors return to India for permanent settlement. 2. For conversion of FCNRB deposits into NRE deposits or vice versa. In case of splitting of the amount of term deposit at the request from the claimant, S. No penalty for premature withdrawal of the term deposit shall be levied if the period and aggregate amount of the deposit do not undergo any change. Banks shall, at their discretion, levy penalty to recover the swap cost in the case of premature withdrawal of FCNRB deposits. No penalties shall be levied in the case of premature conversion of balances held in FCNRB deposits into RFC accounts by non-resident Indians on their return to India. No penalty for premature withdrawal shall be levied, where depositors of the branch desires premature withdrawal of deposit consequent to the transfer of business to another bank. Resident Foreign Currency Account Scheme. Bank shall have the freedom to determine interest on deposits of money accepted by it or renewed by it under the Resident Foreign Currency Account Scheme, in accordance to the comprehensive policy on interest rates on deposits duly approved by the Board of Directors or any committee of the Board to which powers have been delegated. Prohibitions and exemptions. 1. At the time of accepting deposits, banks are not permitted to give gifts costing more than Rs 250, as prescribed by IBA, to their customers. 2. Interest-free deposits except current account are not to be accepted. 3. Not to grant against advance against deposits of other banks. The Depositor Education and Awareness Fund Scheme, 2014. Section 26A of Banking Regulation Act, 1949, updated as per RBI Circular 7 July 2018. Reserve Bank, drawing its powers through Banking Regulation Act, 1949, Section 26, has established the Depositor Education and Awareness Fund. The funds lying in an account in India with any bank which has not been operated upon for a period of 10 years or any deposit or any amount remaining unclaimed for more than 10 years shall be credited to the fund, within a period of 3 months from the expiry of the said period of 10 years. Procedure of transfer. Banks shall transfer to the fund the amounts becoming due in each calendar month, that is proceeds of the inoperative accounts and balances remaining unclaimed for 10 years or more, as specified in the scheme, and the interest accrued thereon on the last working day of the subsequent month. The fund shall be utilized for promotion of depositors' interest and for such other purposes which may be necessary for the promotion of depositors' interests as specified by RBI from time to time. The depositor would, however, be entitled to claim from the bank her deposit or any other unclaimed amount or operate her account after the expiry of 10 years, even after such amount has been transferred to the fund. The bank would be liable to pay the amount to the depositor, claimant, and claim refund of such amount from the fund. Reserve Bank hereby specifies that the rate of interest payable by banks to the depositors/claimants on the unclaimed interest-bearing deposit amount transferred to the fund shall be 4% simple interest per annum until further notice. Illustratively, if a bank transfers to the fund on June 30, 2014 an amount of Rs 10,000 relating to savings bank account and subsequently repays the amount to the claimant on July 30, 2014, then the amount of interest at the simple rate of 4% per annum would be Rs 33 for 30 days, considering 365 days a year, and the total amount to be claimed as refund from the fund would be Rs 10,033. The rate of 1st July 2018 has been reduced to 3.50% per annum. This is it for this video. Thank you so much for your love and support. Stay tuned for the next one. Till then, bye and stay blessed.